The annual assessment committee of the Galactic War Academy was proceeding with its usual solemn dignity when Administrator Jexilith burst through the quantum-sealed doors, their crystalline form flickering between deep purple and alarming chartreuse. The room's occupants, representing 17 of the galaxy's most militant species, turned their various sensory organs toward the interruption with expressions ranging from mild disapproval to outright offense. "Order, we will have order," croaked Supreme Administrator Vathak, their throat sacs inflating with indignation. "Administrator Jexilith, explain this unseemly—" "The ratings!" Jexilith's voice crackled like static through their crystalline form as they stumbled forward, arms overflowing with holographic data tablets. "The combat ratings, they're impossible. The whole system." Their agitation caused several tablets to slip free, clattering across the obsidian floor and projecting their contents into the air. The committee chamber erupted in chaos as dozens of unauthorized holograms sprang to life. Three-dimensional footage of small human figures darted through the air, running, jumping, shouting, engaging in what appeared to be complex tactical maneuvers that defied conventional combat doctrine. General Curex of the Arthropodian Empire skittered backward on their 8 legs, mandibles clicking in alarm as a holographic human child ran straight through their thorax, apparently fleeing from another who was shouting, "You're it!" "Contain those projections," Vathak bellowed, but it was too late. The room was awash in analytical overlays, combat ratings, and performance metrics that seemed to defy every known parameter of the assessment system. Professor Yixatul, the Academy's foremost expert in xenobiological combat potential, extended one of their eye stalks toward a particular projection, then quickly retracted it. "These readings, they can't be correct. No species has ever—" They paused, all 4 eye stalks swiveling to focus on Jexilith. "What level of combat training produced these results?" Jexilith's crystalline surface rippled with distress patterns. "That's just it. These aren't from their military academies. These aren't even from their advanced training facilities." They paused, their voice dropping to a haunted whisper. "These are from something they call kindergarten." The word fell like a plasma grenade into the chamber. Senior War Master Dex, whose species had evolved from apex predators, actually backed away from the holograms. "Kindergarten? Some form of elite special forces program?" "No," Jexilith's voice cracked. "It's where they send their young, their asterisk children, asterisk." They frantically pulled up another hologram, showing a facility labeled Happy Hearts Elementary School, Combat Assessment Location Beta. Their offspring gather in these facilities by the dozens, sometimes hundreds, and engage in these tactical exercises voluntarily. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. A human child's laughter echoed from one of the projections, causing several committee members to flinch. "We have to completely redesign the combat rating system." Jexilith was practically vibrating now, their crystalline edges beginning to frost over with stress. "The humans, they're children. They're breaking every curve we have. Look at this." They gestured wildly at a hologram showing what appeared to be an organized mass combat exercise. The label read, Duck Goose, Tactical Analysis. "By the void," Professor Yixatul whispered, all eye stalks fixed on the footage. "What kind of species asterisk are asterisk they?" Vathak's throat sacs had deflated to half their normal size. "Administrator Jexilith, are you suggesting that human children, with no formal combat training, are achieving ratings that our most elite warriors spend decades to—" "Not achieving," Jexilith interrupted, their color shifting to a deep, worried indigo. "Exceeding. Their asterisk baseline asterisk scores are higher than our advanced metrics can measure. And do you know what the humans call these combat exercises?" They pulled up one final hologram showing a smiling human adult in civilian attire. The subtitle beneath read, "Just letting the kids play." The chamber erupted into pandemonium. The Galactic War Academy had stood as the premier military training institution in known space for over 12,000 cycles. Its spire-like campus, built from the repurposed husk of an ancient warship, stretched 20 kilometers into the atmosphere of Martial Prime, its architecture a testament to the combined martial knowledge of 300 species. The Academy's motto, etched in 17,000 languages across its quantum-reinforced gates, read, "Through combat, understanding." Below that, in slightly smaller text, "No refunds." When Earth joined the Galactic Federation, the Academy's Board of Supreme Combat Applications had been thrilled. Humans, while primitive in terms of technological development, had displayed remarkable tactical adaptability during first contact. The fact that they'd managed to destroy only 3 Federation survey ships through unfortunate misunderstandings was considered quite promising. Standard procedure for all new Federation species required comprehensive baseline combat assessment before integration into the Academy's training programs. The assessment division dispatched their most experienced team, Senior Combat Analyst Dr. Enixclax, a member of the gas-based Zathin species, Primary Observer Lieutenant Patok, an energy being who specialized in covert surveillance, and Junior Assistant Kabim, whose species consisted entirely of autonomous bacterial colonies in humanoid form. Their mission was simple: observe human military training at various stages of development and establish standardized combat ratings for the species. They would start with advanced military facilities and work their way down through basic training centers, eventually establishing a complete picture of human combat development. At least that was the plan. The trouble began when the team's transport suffered a minor navigational error. Instead of arriving at West Point Military Academy, they materialized in the parking lot of Little Sprouts Elementary School in suburban Connecticut. The error went unnoticed, partly because their cultural database had been compiled by an intern who had tagged all Earth buildings with uniform architecture as potential training facilities. Most fascinating, Dr. Nixclax noted, their gaseous forms swirling with interest as they observed the facility through the transport sensors. They've cleverly disguised the training grounds with colorful camouflage and miniature obstacle courses. Lieutenant Patok's energy field pulsed in agreement. Observe the perimeter, completely surrounded by primitive but effective containment fencing, clearly a secure facility. Kabim's bacterial colony shifted uncertainly. Should we perhaps verify? Silence, Junior Assistant Dr. Enixclax interrupted. Look, the main doors are opening. We're about to witness human combat training in its earliest stages. The doors had indeed opened, disgorging a stream of small humans onto what the assessment team's database helpfully labeled as an outdoor training ground. The children immediately scattered across the playground, their movements seemingly random but, to the trained eyes of the assessment team, clearly following complex tactical patterns. Incredible, Lieutenant Patok whispered, their energy field dimming in awe. Such natural combat instincts, they don't even appear to need instruction. Dr. Enixclax was already activating their standard assessment protocols. We must document everything, the way they instinctively form and break alliances, their use of elevated positions for tactical advantage, the fearless way they navigate obviously dangerous terrain. Doctor, Kabim ventured, I believe that's just a jungle gym. Junior Assistant, your insight into human terminology is noted, but please maintain scientific objectivity. Now, observe how they're organizing into opposing forces for some form of combat exercise. The children were, in fact, dividing into teams for a heated game of kickball. The assessment team watched in professional awe as their instruments recorded everything. Velocity measurements of the red rubber ball, tactical analysis of base running patterns, threat assessment of the small human designated as it. We should run a full combat assessment, Dr. Enixclax decided. For completeness' sake, of course. The Academy will want to know how humans develop such advanced capabilities. Lieutenant Patok's energy field brightened with enthusiasm. The data will be invaluable. Clearly, we've stumbled upon some form of elite training protocol. Kabim's bacterial colony churned with uncertainty, but they knew better than to argue. Instead, they began calibrating their instruments, blissfully unaware that they were about to generate the most shocking combat assessment results in the Academy's 12,000-cycle history. In the playground, a small girl named Sarah was teaching her friends a new game she'd invented, which the assessment team's computers would later classify as advanced tactical innovation in field combat scenarios. The game was Duck Revolution. It would eventually cause 3 separate alien species to request immediate military alliance with Earth. Let's begin with what we consider the most alarming discovery, Administrator Jezilith said, their crystalline form now a steady, professional shade of blue. The initial panic had subsided into something worse, methodical analysis. The Academy's Grand Assessment Chamber hummed with tension as representatives from 17 military species leaned forward in their variously shaped seats. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing children running across a playground with a red flag. This exercise, designated Capture the Flag, represents master-level strategic operations that would challenge our most elite veterans. Jezilith gestured, and combat analysis overlays appeared. Observe the sophisticated elements: territory control, resource management, tactical retreats, prisoner handling. Prisoner handling, interrupted General Kirk's mandibles clicking. They designate secured opponents as in jail, Jagzilith explained, though our analysts remain puzzled by the ritual of no takebacks. The footage shifted to show a complex game of tag in progress. Professor Yixatal extended an eye stalk for a closer look, then quickly retracted it. The evasion techniques displayed here exceed our elite combat grade standards, Jagzilith continued. Note how the designated pursuit agent, identified as IT, must maintain tactical awareness of multiple targets while they paused as a child tripped, got up laughing and continued running, while displaying remarkable resilience to physical setbacks. But how do they select the pursuit agent? Asked Vathak, throat sacs pulsing with curiosity. Through an elaborate ritual our analysts have termed not it. Jagzilith's surface rippled. The speed of the selection process is unprecedented. The next footage caused several committee members to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Children lined up, holding hands, facing another line of children. This exercise, Red Rover, demonstrates advanced breakthrough tactics. The defensive line must maintain cohesion, while Jagzilith was interrupted by a gasp as the footage showed a small boy breaking through a linked chain of arms. Yes, exactly, the physical courage required to attempt such a maneuver. Professor Yixatal's notepad was filling rapidly. The psychological elements are fascinating, calling out specific opponents by name. Speaking of psychological warfare, Jagzilith continued, switching to new footage, we come to perhaps the most sophisticated training exercise observed. Duck Goose. The chamber fell silent as they watched children sitting in a circle while one walked around, tapping heads. The tension building, whispered Vathak, the psychological pressure of selection. Supreme Administrator, interrupted Senior War Master Dex, are we certain this isn't some form of enhanced interrogation training? Our analysts initially considered that possibility, Jagzilith admitted, but then we discovered something even more concerning. They hesitated before activating the next hologram. I must warn you, what you're about to see challenged our understanding of resource-based warfare. The footage showed a circle of children walking around chairs while music played. Musical chairs? Professor Yixtal read from the data overlay. Some form of territorial conquest simulation. Watch, said Jagzilith grimly. The music stopped. Chaos erupted as children scrambled for seats. A small girl in a butterfly t-shirt executed a perfect tactical slide into the last available chair, leaving her opponent standing and eliminated. Senior combat analyst Dr. Enix Klax, who had been floating silently in gaseous form at the back of the chamber, suddenly condensed and dropped to the floor in a dead faint. The resource management strategies, Jagzilith continued while medical staff attended to Dr. Enix Klax, the willingness to eliminate allies, the use of sonic warfare elements through the musical accompaniment. But surely, General Kurex interjected, not all their training exercises are so intense. Jagzilith's color shifted to an uncertain purple. We're still debating the classification of certain observed phenomena. For instance, they brought up new footage showing two children, one repeatedly moving their finger near another while chanting, I'm not touching you. The chamber erupted in scientific debate. Some form of force field testing? No, clearly it's an exercise in precision strike capabilities. Could it be related to their theoretical physics program? Order! Vathak's voice cut through the chaos. Administrator Jagzilith, what do the humans say about these training methods? Jagzilith's surface crystallized into patterns of deep confusion. That's the most disturbing part, Supreme Administrator. They insist these are not training exercises at all. They call them games. Silence fell over the chamber. Games? Vathak tested the unfamiliar word. Yes, they claim these complex combat simulations are purely recreational activities for their young. They say the children are just... Jagzilith's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. Having fun. The footage continued playing, showing kids now engaged in an activity identified as Simon Says. The analysis overlay was frantically trying to classify it as either command structure training or counterintelligence exercises. Professor Yixatal's eye stalks all focused on one particular data point. Administrator, These readings suggest their young are capable of maintaining these high-intensity training exercises for up to 6 hours with only minimal breaks for sustenance and hydration. Correct, Jigzilith confirmed. They call this period recess. In the back of the chamber, Dr. Nixclax had regained consciousness just in time to hear this. They promptly fainted again. There's one more thing, Jigzilith added, their crystalline form shimmering with uncertainty. We've discovered that these training facilities often conclude their daily operations with an exercise called clean-up time. The tactical implications of their waste management protocols are concerning. The committee sat in stunned silence, watching footage of children efficiently sorting toys into labeled bins while singing a cheerful song about working together. By the void, whispered Varthak, their throat sacs completely deflated. What have we invited into the Federation? Ambassador Chen had practiced her diplomatic face for years. She'd maintained perfect composure during the Great Pasta incident of 2182, hadn't cracked a smile during the bubble wrap crisis, and had successfully negotiated the Intergalactic Coffee Treaty without once giggling at the caffeine containment protocols. But this was testing her limits. And so, the Arthropodian ambassador concluded, all 8 legs quivering with righteous indignation, we demand the immediate cessation of all advanced combat training programs in human educational facilities, particularly these kindergarten installations. Chen bit the inside of her cheek hard. Ambassador Karax, I assure you again that these are not combat training programs. They're simply children's games, recreational activities, play. Play? The word echoed through the Federation Council chamber, as if she'd suggested they were actually running nuclear fusion experiments. You expect us to believe that your species developed 37 distinct forms of tactical combat exercises for amusement? Well, when you put it that way, Chen managed to turn her laugh into a diplomatic cough. At the far end of the chamber, the Zathin representative's gaseous form swirled in agitation. We have analyzed the footage. The exercise designated Duck Goose contains 14 distinct psychological warfare elements. The selection process alone, it's just a fun way for kids to... And this musical chairs protocol, interrupted the crystalline delegation's speaker. The systematic elimination of participants through resource denial while utilizing sonic warfare techniques. Who would subject their young to such... They struggled to find an appropriately horrified word. Such ruthless training. Chen noticed the hive mind representative appeared to be taking detailed notes. Furthermore, Karax continued, mandibles clicking rapidly, our analysis of Simon Says reveals command structure subversion protocols that exceed our most advanced counterintelligence training. The psychological complexity of forcing trainees to distinguish between valid and invalid commands while under time pressure. It's just a simple game that... Simple? The Energeticheski Empire's ambassador crackled with indignation, their energy form causing nearby translator devices to fritz. We attempted to implement these protocols in our military academy. 3 veteran instructors suffered complete nervous breakdowns trying to master the red light, green light maneuvers. That nearly broke Chen's composure. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that laughing at other species' military failures was explicitly forbidden by Federation Protocol 227B. Representatives, please, she tried again. I understand your concerns, but I assure you, these activities serve purely recreational. Then explain this. Karax activated a holographic display showing children engaged in a spirited game of The Floor is Lava. The chamber erupted in gasps. Environmental hazard adaptation training, tactical furniture utilization, advanced parkour protocols. Chen pinched the bridge of her nose. That's not... Our military analysts have identified 23 distinct survival skills being taught simultaneously, Karax announced. The sheer efficiency of the training program. In the back of the chamber, Chen noticed several species military attachés furiously taking notes. The hive mind representative had already submitted requisition forms for 3,000 couch cushions. The Federation cannot stand idle while humans continue to operate these advanced combat academies unchecked, Karax declared. We demand oversight, regulations, a complete review of all playground equipment for military applications. The swings alone, muttered the Zathin representative, the physics principles being instilled. Chen was saved from responding by an urgent message on her comm unit. She checked it, then had to fake a coughing fit to hide her reaction. Representatives, she managed once she'd recovered. I've just received word that the tactical assessment team you sent to observe our training methods has submitted a new report. Apparently they visited something called a birthday party. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Birthday party. Kaka's mandibles twitched nervously. Yes, Chen confirmed, scanning the message. They seem particularly concerned about something called pin the tail on the donkey. 3 different species representatives fainted simultaneously. Blindfolded accuracy training, whispered the crystalline delegate in horror, with live animals. Chen gave up trying to maintain her diplomatic face and switched to her emergency poker face instead. I should mention they haven't even gotten to the piñata yet. The chamber descended into chaos. In the ensuing panic, Chen noticed the hive mind representative quietly adding research party games to their military development agenda. She made a mental note to warn Earth's diplomatic corps that they'd probably be receiving formal requests for tactical consultation on proper implementation of Duck Goose protocols within the week. At least the daycare incident hadn't been reported yet. Chen wasn't sure the galaxy was ready to learn about the military applications of nap time. General Sarah Cooper of the United Earth Defense Force stood in the Academy's Grand Assessment Chamber, staring at the holographic displays with an expression that suggested she was either about to burst out laughing or having a stroke. Behind her, Admiral Jensen was pinching the bridge of his nose so hard it looked painful. Let me get this straight, Cooper said slowly, addressing the assembled Galactic War Academy board. You've rated our 5-year-olds as master-level tactical commanders because they play tag. The pursuit evasion protocols are most impressive, Zhigzilith insisted, their crystalline form glowing with academic pride. The spatial awareness alone. It's tag, Cooper repeated. They're just playing tag. Professor Yixatal extended an eye stalk toward the general. You keep using this word, playing. Our databases suggest it refers to recreational activity, but surely these are carefully designed training exercises? No, Jensen finally spoke up, voice strained. They're games, just games. Kids do this for fun. The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. Varthak's throat sacs pulsed rapidly as they processed this information. Impossible, declared General Karex. Our analysis clearly shows... Oh my God, Cooper suddenly interrupted, her eyes widening as she looked at the assessment criteria displayed on a nearby screen. Admiral, look at this. Look at who designed the original combat rating system. Jensen stepped closer, squinting at the text. The Prey Species Coalition, what the... Is there a problem? Varthak asked, throat sacs deflating slightly. You could say that, Cooper replied, starting to grin. Your entire combat rating system was designed by species that evolved from prey animals, wasn't it? The chamber fell silent. Well, naturally, Professor Yixtal said, all eye stalks blinking in confusion. The Prey Species Coalition represents over 70% of spacefaring civilizations. Their expertise in threat assessment and survival strategies is unmatched. Cooper and Jensen exchanged looks. That actually explains everything, Jensen said slowly. They're pattern matching based on their evolutionary history. Everything looks like combat training to them because they're hardwired to spot potential threats. But the tactical sophistication, Korex began, is completely accidental, Cooper finished. Humans are pursuit predators. We evolved to chase things down. Our play behaviors naturally mimic hunting patterns because that's literally how we taught our young to survive. The assembled aliens stared at her in horror. You mean, Zhigzilith's surface rippled with dawning comprehension. These behaviors are instinctive. Kids playing tag are basically running the same patterns our ancestors used to chase down prey, Cooper explained, warming to the subject. Hide and seek? Probably developed from ambush hunting. Capture the flag, territory defense. It's not military training, it's just leftover evolutionary behaviors wrapped up in games. Dr. Nixclax, who had finally managed to stay conscious for a full session, began to fade slightly. Are you suggesting that human children instinctively practice advanced combat maneuvers for entertainment? Well, when you put it that way, it does sound a bit concerning, Jensen admitted. But what about the psychological warfare elements, Professor Yixtal demanded? The complex social dynamics, the alliance building and betrayal patterns in Duck Goose? Cooper couldn't help it. She laughed. That's just kids being kids. They're learning social skills through play. Every predator species does it. Haven't you ever seen wolf cubs wrestling or lions play fighting? The silence that followed was deafening. No, Varthak said quietly. No, we haven't. Most of our species don't play. Like at all? Cooper asked, horrified. Play behavior is rare among prey species, Professor Yixatal explained. It leaves one too vulnerable, too exposed. We learn through careful observation and controlled training scenarios. Well, Jensen said diplomatically, that certainly explains the confusion about our kindergartens. So, Jigzilith's crystalline form had taken on a fascinating new color that probably indicated existential crisis. You're telling us that what we've been documenting isn't an advanced military training program, but simply predator species development patterns? Yep, Cooper confirmed cheerfully, just kids being tiny apex predators. Dr. Nixclax finally fainted again. Although, Cooper added, glancing at the still-running footage of a playground in full chaos, maybe we should let them keep thinking it's military training. It might be better for galactic diplomacy. Agreed, Jensen muttered. Much better than explaining we just let our young practice being predators for fun. In the back of the chamber, the hive mind representative was frantically updating their notes. Evolution-based tactical advantages. Recommend immediate implementation of predator behavior patterns in military training. Some misunderstandings, it seemed, were too useful to correct. The Galactic War Academy's grand demonstration arena had never hosted anything quite like this before. Instead of the usual military exercises, the massive space was filled with playground equipment, hastily requisitioned from Earth. A jungle gym gleamed under the artificial lights, slides spiraled toward the cushioned floor, and a red rubber ball sat ominously in the center of it all. In the elevated observation deck, 17 species worth of military analysts clutched their data tablets with various appendages. Below, Miss Thompson's kindergarten class was having the time of their lives. Observe the tactical formation, Professor Yixatal whispered, all eye stalks tracking a group of children, organizing a game of duck, goose. Notice how they maintain the circular defensive position while... Professor, General Cooper interrupted wearily, they're just sitting in a circle because it's fun. Ah yes, Yixatal made a note, psychological conditioning through positive reinforcement. Cooper gave up and watched as little Tommy, the same kid who'd caused an interstellar incident by introducing Duck Revolution to the playground, began tapping heads and saying, "Duck." The assembled aliens leaned forward, instruments whirring. The tension building is remarkable, muttered a Zethin analyst, their gaseous forms swirling with excitement. "Goose!" Tommy shouted, and chaos erupted as he and Sarah began racing around the circle. 3 different species representatives fainted. The hive mind's note-taking reached speeds that threatened to break their tablet. Now, Miss Thompson called out as the game threatened to dissolve into general running around. "Who wants to play, Simon says?" The children cheered. The aliens consulted their briefing materials in alarm. "Is this wise?" Varthak whispered to Cooper. "The command override protocols—" "Simon says put your hands on your head," Miss Thompson called out cheerfully. The children complied, giggling. The Academy's threat assessment systems began blaring warnings about synchronized movement patterns. "Take 3 steps forward." Some children moved, others didn't, all laughing. "Incredible," breathed Kerrix, "the instant tactical analysis required to detect invalid commands." "Simon says jump up and down." The arena's security systems, detecting multiple simultaneous aggressive movements, initiated automatic lockdown procedures. Blast doors began sliding shut as warning klaxons sounded. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Cooper muttered, reaching for her override codes. But it was too late. The children, delighted by the exciting new additions to their game, had already incorporated the flashing lights and sirens into their play. A spontaneous game of the floor is emergency lockdown broke out, spreading across the arena with the infectious speed that only kindergarten chaos can achieve. The adaptability, Professor Yixatal's eye stalks were practically tied in knots with excitement. The immediate tactical integration of environmental hazards into their training protocols. "They're just playing," Cooper insisted, but she was drowned out by the sound of 17 different species worth of military analysts furiously documenting what they believed to be the most advanced combat training they'd ever witnessed. Miss Thompson, veteran of 1,000 playground battles, calmly sat down in her chair and pulled out her emergency lollipop stash. She'd learned long ago that once kindergarten chaos reached critical mass, the only winning move was to wait it out. In the observation deck, Dr. Inixclax had achieved a new personal record by remaining conscious for almost 3 minutes before fainting at the sight of a spontaneous game of emergency lockdown tag. The hive mind representative, notebook full, had moved on to recording video footage. Their military development committee was going to have a field day with this. And in the center of it all, the children played on, blissfully unaware that they were simultaneously advancing and destroying galactic military science with every giggle and game. Some things, it seemed, were universal after all. 6 months after the Great Kindergarten Incident, the Galactic War Academy unveiled its new Human Studies Wing. The dedication ceremony featured a ribbon cutting performed by a 5-year-old with safety scissors, which 3 species recorded as an example of early weapons training. Administrator Zegzilith, now the Academy's first professor of human combat philosophy, stood proudly beside their latest publication, The Art of Play, Understanding Human Tactical Development Through Recreational Combat Simulation. It had become required reading for military strategists across 17 systems, despite, or perhaps because of, the fact that no human could read it without crying with laughter. The integration of human methodologies has revolutionized our approach to training, Zegzilith explained to a reporter from the Galactic Military Times, their crystalline form glowing with academic satisfaction. For instance, our new tag-based pursuit exercises have improved evasion scores by 300%. The reporter nodded, taking notes. Behind them, a group of alien cadets could be seen playing an enthusiastic, if somewhat confused game of red light, green light. The Academy's greatest success, however, came from an unexpected direction. After several alien diplomats witnessed human training methods firsthand, a cultural exchange program was established. The first alien children began attending human schools, leading to a series of increasingly amusing progress reports. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Kerakseth, one such report began, your spawn has shown remarkable improvement in tactical mobility, recess, and resource allocation, sharing toys. Their proficiency in stealth operations, hide-and-seek, is particularly noteworthy, although we're still working on the concept of not turning invisible during tag. The parents, after getting over their initial horror at their children engaging in such high-risk training at a young age, were universally impressed by the results. Previously shy species began showing unprecedented levels of confidence and creativity. The hive mind's young even developed individual personalities, causing a minor philosophical crisis that was eventually resolved through an intense game of Duck Goose. Zegzilith, meanwhile, had become the galaxy's leading expert in what they still insisted on calling human combat philosophy. Their latest research focused on the advanced psychological warfare techniques observed in something called peekaboo, the systematic desensitization to sudden tactical surprises they explained earnestly in their latest lecture, combined with positive emotional reinforcement and facial recognition training. General Cooper, watching from the back of the lecture hall, had given up trying to explain. Besides, the results spoke for themselves. The Academy's new play-based training programs were producing the most well-adjusted officer candidates in its history, even if no one quite understood why. As Miss Thompson had always said, sometimes the best learning happens when you're too busy having fun to notice you're learning at all. Though she did have to admit the hive mind's interpretation of Ring Around the Rosie was getting a bit intense. Galactic War Academy 5 years later. Today's lesson in advanced human battle techniques, announced Professor Kurax the Younger, their mandibles clicking with academic precision, will focus on environmental hazard adaptation protocols. Their class of elite military cadets from 12 different species watched attentively as they activated the training room's holoprojectors. The exercise is designated "The Floor is Lava." You will note that the floor is not, in fact, lava. This is part of the psychological conditioning element. You must believe the floor is lava while simultaneously knowing it is not. This cognitive dissonance is a key element of human tactical training. In the back of the classroom, a Zethan cadet raised a gaseous appendage. "Professor, what is the strategic objective?" "Survival," Kurax replied gravely, "and according to human doctrine, having fun." They pronounced the phrase carefully, like a complex technical term. "Begin." The resulting chaos would have brought a tear to any kindergarten teacher's eye. Meanwhile, in Miss Thompson's classroom back on Earth, a tablet was playing the latest feed from the Academy's training sessions. She watched as a crystalline being attempted to convince an energy cloud that jumping from cushion to cushion while yelling, "You can't get me," was vital military doctrine. Miss Thompson just shook her head and turned back to her class, where little Timmy had just declared himself supreme emperor of the timeout corner and was building a fort out of spare nap mats. Some things, she reflected as she went to negotiate with the self-proclaimed emperor, were beyond even the galaxy's finest military minds to comprehend. Behind her, the tablet showed the Academy's class descending into the pure chaos that only "the floor is lava" could create. Professor Curex could be heard shouting, "Remember your training, the floor is metaphorically lava, metaphorically."